If you ask many Palestinians under Israeli occupation right now and brutal assault, they wouldn't know what a ceasefire looks like because the fire has not ceased for them. I think that this period has exposed the extent, in fact, and the length and the magnitude and the dimension of the Palestinian exceptions, because international law has been experienced by Palestinians in its absence and its lack of effectiveness rather than its capacity of empower and bring justice. It's political power, economic power, financial power. And what is exposed today is the extent of the influence of the two latter over the former. We live in a system where clearly geopolitical interests and financial interests are as powerful as to not only to make certain people in power or not, and when I say in power, I also think of the media and the power they hold, able not to see, to turn their eyes away, while civilians are being slaughtered, literally. We have not spared ourselves anything in terms of brutality. And still, this last assault on Gaza has been brutal, particularly for how it has scarred the children. I'm aware there are children in this room, and I will not get into the usual spiel of the horrors, but again, no one should see children hanging from the wall. And this is what I've seen. And this is not something that certain people have prepared not to see. This is something that has been justified and enabled, including in this country, including in my own country. So we need to reflect together on how did we get there, and also what has been exposed, the extent of how racialized is the system we live in. Again, it's not that we didn't know, but now it's in daylight. It's unapologetic, and it's so rapacious and furious that it doesn't disdain hitting on us if we protest. In our liberal democracy, or as Omar Barghouti would say, in our quasi-liberal democracies, we are seeing erasure of the Palestinian people. We are seeing what risks to be the ultimate stage of the erasure of the Palestinian people, because the Palestinian people are under threat and, in fact, have been facing erasure for 100 years. 100 years. It's 100 years that the Palestinians deal with in the brutal face of European colonialism. I'm sorry, but this is the reality. I understand the plight of the Holocaust has been a tragedy, but this is our responsibility and has been unleashed on the Palestinians. What does justice mean today? For sure, it means accountability. Accountability. Today, it must be retributive justice. It must be justice that hits the architects, those that this genocide have ordered and also executed as much as possible. Because this, and in a way, this is the culmination. We wouldn't have been here speaking tonight hadn't it been for the impunity that Israel has enjoyed since its very existence and before, in fact. And this must end. But justice cannot be understood only as retributive. The Palestinians deserve historical justice. It's part of the DNA of the Palestinian people as Nakba survivors, where there are other Holocausts that have not hit the entirety of a people. When a given people was distributed around the world, the Palestinian people are all Nakba survivors because their homeland has been dismembered and they have become a nation scattered around the world. It must be restorative as well. It's important to focus on the perpetrators, but it's even more important to focus on the victims. And I don't like this term much, but at the same time, while they are strong and resilient and we should not romanticize, there are also people who have very deep wounds that need to be healed. The Palestinians are an incredible, really resilient people with a strong sense of identity and generosity. This will help, but they need to have the conditions to heal. And it's not going to be easy. Since the beginning of the ceasefire, 5,000 children have been found with permanent cognitive dysfunction. They won't heal. This won't heal. And 41% of the adult population in Gaza, meaning anyone above 18, is taking care of children who are not his or her own. So this is the situation. What has happened in Gaza is a genocide, and I have no doubt about that. Now 870 Palestinians have been killed in the West Bank since October 23. 870, including 170 kids. And it continues. But also already in October, I was reporting when the Palestinians killed in the West Bank were 700. And the attack on the health facilities and civilian infrastructure. The health facility in the West Bank has been attacked more times than in Gaza. But of course, in Gaza, it has been more destructive. Why we're destroying hospitals, clinics, and ambulances and targeting medical personnel in the West Bank? And the other thing is the torture. Nearly 10,000 Palestinians have been arrested and detained in the West Bank. Not new, Israel has done it. I've analyzed this. This was my second report. And this is why nothing of what we are seeing is new. It's not surprising. It's shocking, but not surprising. And so they have been arrested and detained arbitrarily by an unlawful occupation. And many of them have been tortured. And I don't have updated figures, but until end of October, 70 Palestinians were killed while in detention, many of them under torture. It's really brutal. So in the face of all this, shall we despair? Not really. If we have time to despair, it means that we have also a lot of privilege. I'm not saying that because what we feel is not real. This is what we are as human beings. I mean, and then think of the Palestinians among us. Think of the Palestinians that on top of what they were suffering, seeing what was done to their people. And I often say I've learned from the Palestinians and other people from the Arab region. I mean, a people is like a body. You chop a limb and the entire body suffers. And this is what it gives us the idea of what has been happening to them. And the Palestinians have continued to be killed and blamed and smeared. I mean, in this part of the world, you talk to people and it seems that the Palestinians brought this havoc upon themselves, just like that. Let's forget 100 years of dispossession, displacement. Let's forget 57 years of unlawful occupation that has turned into a vehicle to steal the land, to displace the people in the name of security, and more now, and this is shocking in 2025, God. So what we need to do is not to despair. I keep on saying hope is a discipline. It's not my quote, I'm citing someone else. We have three things to do: educate ourselves and others. We need to know the facts, and we need to know what it means legally, not because you need to be mini lawyers. No, but because this allows you, empowers you to see how your political representatives are betraying your constitution, the rules that you have in this country, and are making you responsible of the situation in the occupied Palestinian territory. It's important to educate others. We need to push back on the narrative that has been imposed. I mean, it's incredible how much the public debate has been dominated by voices who have really reproduced and amplified, I wouldn't say the Israeli narrative, the government's narrative, the military narrative, because there are also Israelis who are fighting against, side by side, one step behind, because ultimately this is the liberation of the Palestinian people. Of course, Jewish Israelis have a responsibility, of course, and those who fight honestly one step behind the Palestinians, but they are against the apartheid, occupation, and genocide. Do you hear them in our TVs or on our newspapers? No. And the other thing is that we need to rediscover a sense of togetherness, a sense of community, among community who thinks together and act together. And international law, it continues to be used by some, invoked when it's convenient, and then referred to as a useless paraphernalia of some woke culture. And no, instead, international law is a system of rules and mechanisms that should restrain, confine politics and even diplomacy. And this is something we need to know. And resolving the question of Palestinian international law, according to international law, is not complicated. It's simple. It's simple. I know it's easier said than done. I know. But this is where we need to go. The goal is end the genocide now. It's not over, despite the ceasefire. End the occupation. There is a deadline, by September this year, Israel has been ordered by the International Court of Justice to withdraw the troops, to dismantle the settlements, and to relinquish any form of control that it has on Palestinian resources, because it has practiced racial discrimination and apartheid and annexation, and makes reparation and do not hamper the return of those who have been displaced. And these are also responsibility that your government here has to make it happen, all the more at the time of a genocide, and it shouldn't have transferred, or it should not transfer arms directly or indirectly, in total or in parts, to Israel. So we need to think together and act together. This is what we have to do.